Thank you very much for choosing to hear us. My name is Natasha Noreen, and I am part of Radical Girls. Radical Girls is a young movement of the European Network of Migrant Women. With Philia, we have history. I wanted to say long history, but 2 years is not long actually. So we have a history that it's our third time that we are here, but for a few members it's the first time. So we're going to be a bit nervous as well, and a lot of emotions are going to come up. And the discussion today we wanted to talk about, it's about the sexualization of young girls from various perspectives. There are different stereotypes that are being portrayed on social media that become realistic in their daily lives in Europe, in all parts of the countries, and we want to discuss all together how it is shaping our lives individually but also as collectively. Together with me on the panel, I have got other members of the Radical Girls who are gonna introduce themselves, and together with us we have the honor of having Gemma Atkinson from Yes Matters, and I'm gonna allow them now to present themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha. My name is Justine. I'm French, so you're going to notice it at some point. I'm 20 years old. I'm 22 years old, sorry. And I'm a feminist since I was more or less 15 years old. I'm an activist since 7 years now, and a member of Radical Girls since just a few months, and I'm really happy to have the opportunity to speak in front of you today, so thank you for being here.
Hello everyone, can you hear me? My name's Azura. I'm of Afro-Caribbean German descent. Currently I live in England, but I've also lived in many other places, including Spain. I became a member of Radical Girls in February 2020. Reason being, as a young black feminist, I didn't feel that there was very little in my locality where I could raise issues that I was concerned about, such as sexism, racism, oppressive practice, and violence against women. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Gemma Aitchison. I'm definitely the oldest one on this panel, aren't I? I'm not a radical girl, but I'm a big fan. So I'm founder of Yes Matters UK. We give support and rehabilitation to girls who suffer sexual violence for free, without limiting the number of sessions, without a conviction, without any of the other nonsense, because we believe that the girls that this happens to, they shouldn't have to live with the consequences of the perpetrator's actions, and they shouldn't be failed twice. I am from Bolton, unfortunately. I'm a working class feminist. Yes. And yeah, I'm really pleased to be invited onto this panel and included in it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, amazing ladies, young ladies, that you're here today with us. So, the first thing that I want to start with is our experiences as young girls, being born as females in a patriarchal world. It's something that touches us individually very differently. We get this consciousness very, very differently. Sometimes we start seeing it from a very young age without knowing what's happening with us, without having to name it. And the journey of womanhood, of feminism, is always painful because of the world we are born in, where there is always and always more and more restricted, more and more small spaces for women. It's always reducing. So I wanted to talk with the girls about their experiences. How did you start seeing yourself as women, as girls in a patriarchal society?
Okay, so thank you for the question, Natasha. Well, I think seeing myself as a female and the way you can understand it in a patriarchal society became a part of my life since I became aware of having a body, you know, and what it meant to have a female body in a patriarchal society. So I think it was not like before I wasn't aware of having a body. I mean, I knew, of course, it was there. I knew it was thanks to him that I could run, I could eat, I could have fun. But the thing would change is that I didn't know that I would be defined by it, and by it alone, and that this body would be so sexualized that I would be almost dispossessed of it. And that's the huge difference, I think. And I started to have this feeling when I was 14 years old, so at a really early age, because I grew up in a small village in France. And at this age, I chose to kind of change my life. And I moved to an high school in a bigger city, Toulouse. It's a large city in the south of France. And I mean, I wasn't afraid of changing my life. I wasn't afraid of move out of my comfort zone. I actually felt the need to do so because growing up in a small village, it's kind of oppressing sometimes. But I didn't have family in this town, so I spent my first year in a boarding school, 90% male. So it was quite a huge change. I would say that in this male environment, I had not only changed my environment, I also changed the perception I had about my own body. And I say my body, but I think this body wasn't really mine anymore. Because unconsciously I was already looking at it as a stranger, you know? Like, it wasn't my body because it wasn't longer at the disposal of my needs and desire, but of those of others. And I had this really violent feeling that from subject, I started to see myself as an object. And at this time, I think we all know that no one had ever talked to me about sexism, about violence against women, about inequality. So I was just alone in this huge city thinking, how can it be? I mean, why the men are looking at me this way? Why I don't know how to react? And I had a school project, and I had to write a paper on the notion of discrimination, a huge concept. And I don't know why, actually, to be really honest, but I chose to talk about sexism, and not because I was particularly interested in this topic, but because the teacher asked me to do it. And so I started to read articles, and I mean, my brain boiled, and my body and my senses are awakened, you know, because I thought, I'm sorry, but I thought, what the fuck? Really? Really? I was like, this is happening. And I felt like literally screaming, you know, because I felt like I had discovered something completely crazy, and crazy because no one was talking about it, even though it marks every woman's life. And I thought, why? Why this isn't an issue? So yeah, I think from this moment on, I choose to make it an issue that matters, you know. And I start to talk around me about this, sometimes with joy, sometimes with sadness, a lot of time with angers. And I start to evolve because at first I was very careful to say I am not a feminist, okay? I am just for equality between men and women. This is completely different. And after I was like, this is a stupid pleonasm because I think no one would say I'm not anti-racist. You know, I'm just for equality between the races. It doesn't make any sense. So yeah, from that moment on, I started to think, okay, let's do a small revolution, you know, around me And after we're going to see, and now I'm here and I'm really glad, so thank you.
My story goes back some time. Unknown to me when I was born black. I learned that I was born into a world with emerging technologies, with global financial difficulties and climate challenges, and I realized that I was born a girl, and one day I became a woman. At 9 years old, I started my period, so quite early, and I noticed that my body was changing, and I noticed the feeling, it created a feeling where I felt like I was being looked at differently. In primary school, we were forced to undress in front of the boys for physical education, and as the only black person in my class, I was aware that I felt conscious with the stares. After many battles with the schools and my mum acting on my behalf, the school decided that I'd be able to get changed in the toilets. So rather than undress in front of the boys, I could get changed in the toilets, but meanwhile all the other girls were left to get changed with the boys. I think lots of my friends came to me and said, "Why are you getting changed in the toilets?" And I explained, of course, I'm uncomfortable getting changed in front of the boys. They all stare at us when we get changed. After a while, all of the girls came and got changed in the toilets with me. And then the school decided that all the girls should have their own area of getting changed. But even though no one said anything, it was clear that all the girls felt the same. All the girls felt uncomfortable getting undressed in front of the boys. So that's when I began to notice the injustices that we suffered as young girls.
So my journey to feminism, blimey. So I didn't really notice anything about feminism until after I became a mother, because up until then, all the representation of women being young, being white, being thin, I was all of those things. And so because I was all of those things, I didn't notice that there was a problem, because everyone looks like me. All the pop stars, all the women in the adverts, you know, everywhere. So I didn't really notice until I wasn't what I was supposed to be. Many of you will know my story as to why I became a radical feminist. It was after the rape and murder of my sister, Sasha, when she was 16. And the thing that I want to make super clear about that is that the reason that she died and the reason that many girls face injustices is for one reason, and that is because they are girls. It isn't because of what they've worn. It isn't because of what they identify as a feeling. It's not their makeup. It's not where they walk, not whether they walk on their own. Not because a bus driver hasn't jumped off his bus and started to protect them. It's because they're girls. And because violence against women and girls is dismissed purely because it is violence against women and girls. That's why it's not taken seriously. And with all the stuff that's been in the media recently, with Sarah Everard, as I'm sure you'll all be aware of, in similar circumstances, the perpetrator who killed my sister had previous sexual offences. And so what I really feel strongly about as a feminist is that if we start listening to girls when this shit starts, if we start seeing them as people and not as objects, and we listen to what they have to say, we listen when they tell us about the boys looking at them and the men flashing them and the men leering at them on the bus and all this other shit, if we listen to them, then it won't escalate until there's a dead body at the end, if we listen to them in the first place. So that's why I'm a feminist.
So, thank you very much, girls. It's really, it strikes me every time, this thought that we are always talking about development globally. We talk about modernity. We talk about this technological millennium where we are living, and yet for women it feels like we are still living in a medieval time where we still have to justify why our lives are worth living for, where we have to fight just to exist with our own terms and conditions without any prefixed notions about ourselves. What's really interesting is that all this, as Justine mentioned, that we are never taught in no level of education in schools, but also at home. If your parents are not socially aware, they're not going to teach you that there is a thing called sexism and that hurts girls and women all around the world. It's something that you take a journey into your womanhood, to your girlhood, with a lot of pain, and you start exploring that, and the more you explore, the more pain you see for yourself and for all the other women who are being done injustice to. So I wanted to ask to the girls about this particular movement where you felt like there are issues with young girls, and if you happen to remember that, and if you can, talk more about that. Thank you.
Thanks. Well, as I said before, like defining myself as a feminist in the village where I grew up requires yeah, thank you. Some audacity. I think I was lucky enough to be raised by open parents, who raised my older brother and me almost the same way, because it's never the same way, of course. But the thing is that I quickly realized that the outside world kept reminding me my condition as a woman, And in the village, everyone knows each other, and reputations are quickly made, especially for girls. And I think this notion of reputation play a big part in my life, because I just realized, that while boys were discovering their freedom of movement, for example, well, the girls were encouraged to be beautiful, because if they were not beautiful, it's not just about the appearance, it's also, if you're not beautiful, you're not going to have any friend, you're not going to be considered the same way, and that's quite violent for a young girl, And it's not just be beautiful, it's also be the most beautiful, because at a really early age, we are taught to hate each other, Be competitive with another woman, because you have to please a man, and to please a man, you have to be the most beautiful. So it doesn't help when you're younger and you want to make friends, and I don't know, you heard adults say that fights between girls are normal because we were girls, and girls are notoriously jealous of each other, And I'm ashamed of it, but of course I was part of I was one of these girls saying that I prefer to hang out with boys because they are more fun. Actually, now I don't think that way anymore. It's pretty obvious. And the thing is that does not stop at adolescence, like reputation become oppressing, our body become more and more sexualized. And since I'm a feminist, I often thought about the expression easy girl, This expression starts to appear in our daily language, and I probably use it myself. But on the other hand, the expression easy boy doesn't exist. I never use it. I think I never heard someone using it, and I think we all know why. And this made me think also, about a writer that I love, and I think you all know her, Virginia Woolf. She said that men write books about women, but I think they actually do more than that, I think they put words in women's mouth. I think men are forced to define ourselves with their words, but also to see ourselves with their eyes. And yeah, I mean, it's so violent when you realize that, because you realize that your body, it's not your body, it's an invasion, you know. They invented us. They invented the woman. They made her pose on the cover of magazine. They made her parade on the catwalk. They made her act on cinema. And they ask us to be the same, to be like them. But this was not obvious, you know, when I was just a child walking on my small village. But it materialized when I landed in a city covered with women who didn't look like the woman I knew, who didn't look like me. I was like, I don't understand, and how can I fix that? How can I talk to my friends, and how can I say, this is not your body, don't worry, you can look differently and you're still gonna be okay. So yeah, I think a lot of issues about young girls start to raise in my brain, you know, at a really early age. Thank you.
I'm going to come back to the getting undressed in front of boys in primary school. I think that lack of acknowledging our space as girls fed into the whole notion of our role, you know, to be available to boys, but we were negated, our feelings were negated. Sorry. We were encouraged to undress in front of the boys and change in front of the boys. And I just think it shows that availability for men is taught early, and it's entrenched within the structures of patriarchal belief systems. You're doing great.
How to summarise? I think the term "not all men" summarises it perfectly. It just outright says that actually men's feelings matter more than women's lives, so stop talking about it, we're more important. And that comes from, gender stereotypes. There's no other way around it. The idea that we have sexual objectification of girls, we have the subject who's entitled to the object. We're supposed to be objects for men, we're supposed to adhere to their product specifications, what they want, and nowhere is that more prevalent than in pornography. As the great Dawkins said, how can one half of the population feel safe when the other half is putting their abuse, putting them into categories for their sexual gratification? How do we expect girls to feel safe? And I do feel that there is a rise specifically on girls, because sexualising girls does adhere to those gender stereotypes. It makes the men feel bigger and more masculine because the girl's small. We tell the women in pornography to be hairless and thin like little girls. And essentially, girls, worryingly younger and younger, have a target on their backs. And I think that that's something that schools need to acknowledge. I think it's something that men need to acknowledge as well. And I think that it's essentially the most dangerous thing you can be. The thing that makes your life the most scary is to be a teenage girl. And I think that that's a real issue that we need to face.
So, talking about the sexualization of young girl in 21st century, I think it's all the history, because it's his story, has always been violent for women. But I think this time of our lives, it's extremely dangerous for more and more younger girls, because of the extreme sexualization that's happening. And this is not happening out of nowhere. It's not just some social norm that's being constructed at the moment. There is a whole process, and I think the social media, the entertainment world, plays a huge role. Now with each new app that's coming up, there is always a way of some creepy man trying to get into conversation and to who knows what to young girls. And I think one of the most important aspects is talking about the normalization of pornography, how younger and younger girls are made to adapt to this pornographic vision of self, of not only as young girls, but young girls wanting to portray themselves as adults, and they are being taken away their innocence, their easy life, where they are supposed to have existential crisis and, you know, find answers on their own, go on to adventures, whatsoever. Instead, there are these new ways of telling them, instead of going through this whole Alice in the Wonderland path, trying to find themselves and trying to find their own specific niche. Lisa Marie mentioned, like, we all gonna feel that in our walk of life, that we are gonna have some expertise. Some of the young girls we're gonna meet, they're gonna, in 20 years, they're gonna be studying biology, they're gonna be working as scientists somewhere, they're gonna be teachers, there are gonna be some who are just gonna be simply housewives. But that is not like something they are choosing independently now, especially with the social media. The type of teaching that's being done, it's extremely harmful. It's not just anymore being the easy girl, it's just always being pornographic version of self and always being available. And I think patriarchy plays very cleverly in this role, where it is already giving you rules by which you are going to define yourself, instead of waiting for somebody else to define you. So instead of being critical of the word, when I hear being called bitch as a young girl, instead of saying that, you know, I need to be critical of that and I feel uncomfortable about it, maybe I want to talk about it. Now what is happening, the normalization through whatever cool app there is gonna be today, after Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok, XYZ, we are gonna see more and more young girls accepting being bitches, because before the perpetrator is going to call me that, I'm gonna call myself that, I'm gonna get away if this is the only way to save myself. A lot of other stereotypes and generalization are part of such sexualization being done through social media. So this is what I wanted to ask the girls about. Like, what do you think reputation, stereotypes, and social media are related to the sexualization of young girls and women in 21st century?
Thank you. So to start, I think everything Natasha said about pornography, it's really, really important, because made me think about a friend of mine. I talked to her like a few days ago maybe, and she has a boyfriend, and she seems okay with him, you know. I mean,
That's not going to the right way. She's a boyfriend, ouch.
I was like, okay, he seems normal. I mean, and she said to me, can I ask you something? Because I don't know if I'm exaggerating, but he said a compliment to me, and I didn't took it as a compliment, and I was actually pretty shocked. And I said, okay, what was the compliment? And she said, he compliments my body, saying that my body look like a porn star body. And I was like, clearly, this is not a compliment I want to receive. But, you know, I was like, even if we are all feminists and we are all really used to talk about this kind of subjects, I think it's sometimes hard to explain to another person, this is why it's not okay, you know. And you have to tell him, dump him, I don't know. But why you don't have to accept this and why you don't have to think even that you are exaggerating. That's the worst part of actually. It's like, but he said it was a compliment. Who cares? If it's not for you, it's not a compliment. And actually like saying that, it's not a surprise for me. How many times I have heard even friends, you know, joking about pornography because this is not a real subject for them. This is something they are used to watch, something they were raised with pornography. So when you talk about, okay, domestic violence, maybe rape, and if they are not too stupid and too sexist, they can understand. But if you talk about pornography, everyone's gonna laugh at you. Everyone's gonna say, it's okay, I mean, just, you know, like take a big breath and you're gonna be fine, this is just pornography, because they don't get it. They don't understand how violent this industry is. They just don't get it, and I think this is really a topic we have to talk about, and not just inside our feminist circles, but also outside, and raise our voice and speak about pornography, because I see effect of pornography every day in my life and the life of my sisters also. So yeah, it was my point about pornography, but in general to answer the question of Natasha about social media, reputation, stereotypes. When I was a child, I was used to watch a really famous TV reality show called A New Look for a New Life. And it was something funny in my head, you know. It was not a big deal, it was just, okay, some fashion issues and stuff. But when I was writing my speech, actually, I don't know why, but I thought about this show. And I thought, okay, this might be funny, but actually this show is a perfect representation of all the standards imposed on the woman, you know. And I think it's not just in France. I mean, fortunately, I think this kind of show exists everywhere, actually.
What is it?
It's...
No, tell us more about the show, like which specifically you're talking about.
It's called, A New Look for a New Life. Mm-hmm. And in the majority of cases, it's a woman, you know, and the family of this woman called the show at the rescue to fix, like, candidates' physical appearance. And the reason are always the same. They're always like, she's not feminine enough. She can't find time for herself. She can't seduce her husband anymore. And I mean, a normal being, or at least a feminist being, would say, okay, maybe it's because she's not doing okay. Maybe it's because the, I don't know, like the charge imposed, you know, on the woman is so great that she just doesn't have time to think about other stuff than a job, the kids, what's she gonna cook for dinner. I mean, this kind of stuff, like daily stuff, you know. It's just, no, that's her fault. She's not finding time for herself. She's not sexy anymore. Let's fix her, you know. And the worst part, I mean, that's worse, but the worst part is the first part of the show. It's literally the woman in the middle of a busy streets, and people passing by and judging her and saying, yeah, this is not okay. No, she has to fix this. She has to change this. And this is on the television, you know, like people passing by judging her based on her appearance. And this is what I call street harassment, actually. But no, it's okay for them, you know. This is okay, this is normal. She has to be a real woman. She has to be, like, she has to earn the label of woman, you know. And after this, the candidate has to join a coach in charge of her makeover. And so she has to pass through more or less radical transformation, like change of clothing style, hairdresser, makeup, hair removal, and sometimes even plastic surgery, like Botox or stuff like this. And after this, when she's validated, she's going to join a family with a totally new look, and everyone's gonna applaud her, you know, not because she's successful, not because she raised, I don't know, beautiful kids, whatever, no, just because she's sexy, finally. She's a real woman, you know. And I don't know, like, first of all, I essentially hope that after this makeover, she's gonna left the husband, actually. I mean, First thing I would do is ciao, bye-bye. And also, like, this program raised very concrete issue, you know, about unequal treatment between men and women, because women always expect much less from men, you know. We are so tolerant about physical changes. I mean, you can't imagine a woman complaining on television in front of thousands of viewers about the increasing size of her husband's belly and gradual baldness, you know. And the opposite does not seem so shocking to us anymore. The husband is pitied, you know. He has been lied to about the goose. So everything happened as if the body of the woman only half belonged to her. So I will finish on this, but I had this feeling that, okay, the candidate is the witch of the 21st century, actually. She made a mistake. She disobeyed the sexist injunctions aiming at transforming her into a sexual object. So it's normal. People will point fingers at her, and she will be judged. Thank you.
Can you just repeat the question again, Natasha? Sorry.
Sure.
Yeah, sorry. I get emotional.
The question, you did great. The question is more about the reputation and stereotypes playing, what part do they play in the sexualization of young girls and women?
So I began to use social media when I was about 13 years old, and maturing through social media was very difficult because I felt like I had the eyes of the world on me. But I don't think that was the most important thing for me. I think it was important to feel valued by my friends and to see what the responses of my friends were when I was on social media. And I think that need to have friends can sometimes prevent you from seeing the dangers of the virtual world. So when girls are starting to pout or to start to pose more sexual ways, start to get their lips plumped, all of my friends would follow, and that peer pressure would sort of make everyone follow those trends, but then it would gradually become more aggressive. Those sexual styles become more aggressive, and it would see it being normalized in music and the arts. And it's sometimes subtle and sometimes direct. So I think it starts as young girls. It starts as when girls become teens that this happens. But what I noticed was that social media didn't reflect me as a black girl. When I saw images of white women, they were compared to flowers, virgin-like, delicate, loose clothing. They were compared to the arts. But when I saw images of black women, it was big bottoms, gyrating against men, gyrating against dance floors. It'd be black starving children, chastised children, dark black comedy, rather than a talk on serious black subjects. I even realised that if you were to Google black woman and to Google white woman, two totally different images appear. So this goes into stereotypes, the same stereotypes of black Caribbean African woman being animalistic and aggressive are repeated constantly, and same through these images. For example, when I lived in Spain, I was attacked, and that was put on social media. And I think we can't separate it from the fact that we're beaten into a form of submission with no support systems, and all of this makes us feel powerless. Sorry, I lost where I was going with that. I think I'll pass it on to Gemma, sorry.
Back to the old side of the table. I think social media and pornography are modern child groomers. That's what they are. Just because, you know, he's not some guy in a dodgy trench coat doesn't mean, you know, that like OnlyFans is a child pornography pimp. Like that's what that is. They're grooming children, and they're grooming them in these completely unrealistic, unattainable, sexualized, dick revolving fantasies. And a really famous quote that I'm sure many of you will know is, if women and girls woke up tomorrow, how many multi-billion-dollar industries would collapse? So we profit from grooming our children, we profit from creating mental health problems in our children. And, you know, it's for either dick or money, really. I hope you weren't coming to this talk for sugarcoating things, because that's not really my bag. And I think the thing about social media and pornography and media generally is when you see things like normalisation that has been said about pornography, if you say something now, you're the problem if you've got a problem with pornography. In fact, you're now the problem if you like vanilla sex. So vanilla sex is if you don't want any abuse whilst you're having sex with your partner. So now you're the problem if you don't want to be abused. I mean, it's fun on dating apps for me now. But what the serious side of that is that means that the pornography narrative and all these narratives then sit in our justice systems. If you said to a police officer 30 years ago, I was crying, he punched me, he verbally assaulted me, he urinated on me, I'm covered in bruises, I have internal injuries, the policeman might have taken it seriously. Now, well, we know about the rough sex defence, don't we? Now guys say, oh, well, she still could have consented because she likes rough sex, she wanted it. And so now that mark that wasn't even, you know, really listened to in the first place is being moved further and further and further on. And when it comes to how our children see this, I'm going to talk about boys, so just hear me out a sec, just hear me out. When it comes to boys, so the average age of exposure to pornography in the UK is 11 years old currently. And if our boys are watching pornography, they're being groomed into thinking this is what your sexuality should be, this is what it is to be a man, this is what you should want, this is what you should enjoy. And we talk about positive reinforcement when it comes to getting children to learn in education, and what more positive reinforcement is there than an orgasm? So I will say that it's our children being groomed into this, because I think it is. I think both boys and girls are being groomed into this idea that this is what they should be and this is what they should expect. I don't think it's very well thought through, though. I mean, generally speaking with men, it's like they've not thought it through. You already don't give us an orgasm. You're not very good company. And now it's risking killing us as well. I mean, I'm just going to stay at home with my Ben and Jerry's and, you know, not worth it. I'm done.
I think, okay, thank you very much. Justine had a question.
Yes, no, I just wanted to talk about what you said, Azura, about a black woman being sexualized in a different way, you know. And I wanted to ask you about, you know, like all the famous artists in the music industry, for example, we have now who's been accused, or if they are not, who reproduce all the stereotypes of black women being sexualized this way.
Thank you. So the recent case with the American singer R. Kelly reflects the fact that black girls could be raped and abused sung about within these lyrics without anyone challenge it with the black woman being silenced. And we're being silenced by the capitalistic, patriarchal music industry, misogyny, men, and profits. I stopped listening to R. Kelly a long time ago. He was banned in our house. However, why was his music still played at the school disco? Why were we allowed to sing about abuse and rape as children and dance to it? But the debate within the black community, and currently argued by black men and some women, is that the girls profited from their interactions with the perpetrator, and therefore what's the issue? Many people fail to see that girls as having been raped or abused, but we're willing customers. The girls are being seen as promiscuous, deserving of the abuse, and in many ways wanton. The more abuse this time is aimed at blaming the mother. The mothers are condemned for raising us and turning us into hoes. And even when it comes to Lil Wayne and Nicki Minaj, they have a song called Truffle Butter. Truffle butter is the secretion that's left on a woman after anal sex and then vaginal sex, and it's sang about. And it's very popular, millions of views, global views, but you know, who's there cleaning up these lyrics? Who's there trying to say, let's clean up these lyrics? I think misogyny needs to be fought within all communities. And from my experience, it's not the feminist movement talking on these issues, but the black woman individually, by ourselves, within the black community. So I feel as a black woman, we face our oppression alone. And I think this goes into what Gemma was saying about the rough sex. I've spoken to some of my black female friends, and it's fine for them to be beaten by their man because that's what men in our community do. It's fine for men to spit in our mouths, to want anal sex, to strangle us, to choke us, because that's their way of expressing love. So how we challenge, I forgot, and even in terms of violent terminology, the phrase to get my face beat means to have my makeup done nicely. The phrase we're gonna beat is to have sex. And so it creates an indoctrination into us accepting this violence or these unwanted sexual demands. So I think we need to think about how we're challenging the language used and who's fighting, like I said earlier, who's fighting for this music to be cleaned up. Young women aren't reporting the abuse or the sexual violence because it's being presented as consensual acts of love. And there's so much to do, but as a young black woman, I feel we're being left alone or being silenced around these issues.
Thank you very much, Azura. It was extremely interesting insight you brought up, and I'm really thankful that you asked that question. According to talking about social media and entertainment world, this is something that requires, I think, a lot of analysis. We do know generally that it's full of extremist, misogynist ideologies, but I think more and more it is being taught to young girls, whether it's about pornography, whether the lobby that's being done online about gender identity, whether it's about the sex work is work agenda. It's all being promoted in social media spaces, in virtual spaces, and after COVID, it's completely, we are actually living in that bubble, and more young girls at risk of falling into that ideology rather than trying to find some good inspirational or even, you know, mind-freeing entertainment. It's always some kind of brainwashing happening, and I really think we should maybe have a separate panel just discussing that with maybe more experts. And as feminists, I think we really need to emphasize a lot more onto these social media platforms to reform their policies. Because if I'm gonna say on Facebook, all men are trash, and I get banned for 1 month, I think it should be the same for men who perpetuate any kind of violence, verbal violence initially, that literally goes into physical later on. When we try to mass report somebody who has a very pedophilic vibe from that page, and with all the pictures they post, and yet there is no action being taken from these huge, gigantic websites. So something that we really need to push forward for having more secure policies, specifically for young girls. I want to say children, young boys and girls, but even these kind of sexist and violent practices, they are way more extreme for young girls rather than, you know, a whole group. Anyway, talking about sexualization and violence, I just wanted to have this quick question within the panel. Like, how do you think that okay, I'm going to read that literal question. How does sexualization allow for the justification of violence against women in various forms it takes? What do you think about it?
Thank you, Natasha. Well, you know, I said before, like, I talked before about what I think about invention of the woman, you know. And talking about this, I was thinking, like, it's a quite vicious circle that we have in front of us as women, because we have two choices. They are not choices actually, but you know, we can try like to not look like the woman we are asked to resemble, and doing that, we know that we're going to take the risk to see our value diminish, because our value resides mainly on my capacity to please and to seduce men. Or I can try to look like them and also take the risk to be criticized for being too provocative, too seductive, for example. So I think it's more than a vicious circle. I think it's false advertising, because we all know that we cannot behave like the woman we are asked to resemble. And the way we are treated in a public space is a cruel reminder of that. I mean, we all remember at some point putting a pen and not a dress because we felt danger knocking at our door. We all remember preferring, I don't know, like putting a sweater you grabbed at the last minute as a precaution to hide your shameful female body. So I think this is so strange, because this same body is displayed in this shop window every day, everywhere, all the time. So I think it's really a lie, because these ads, this advertising, don't tell us, be aware, hypersexualization increases the risk of rape, you know. They lie to us, they make us believe in some sort of liberation of the female body, but this liberation actually doesn't exist in our daily life. And our body is all the time used to sell objects. So I'm an object used to sell other objects. And we try our best as a woman, you know, when you don't take conscience and when you don't realize, when you're not a feminist actually, we try our best to look like this woman. But at some point, like, I mean, we are exploited and we are violated by those we are trying to please. And that's the worst part. I mean, one hand, we are told, like, sorry. I think on one hand, I heard a lot of, we can see too much of your boobs, we can see too much of your ass, cover yourself up. You're too sexy, you're too seductive, but on the other hand, all the time, we are told, you are attractive, you're not feminine enough, your body sells. So, then what? How to make the good choice? And I think, yeah, because of all this injection, of course that the sexualization increased for us the risk of being sexually aggressed, of being raped. But it's not because of our body, it's because of what the female body meant in a patriarchal society.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question, but I think I'm aware, do we have the question and answer now?
If you can still let us know what you think briefly so that we can pass to the Q&A.
Thank you. So I think I touched on this in terms of the violence within the black community and how it's normalised in music. And how these stereotypes, these negative stereotypes of women aren't challenged. So I think we have to do something about the language we use and cleaning up the lyrics and the music.
Thank you.
The thing is, and men don't like hearing this, men either have self-control or they don't. They can't have the self-control to run the majority of our governments, our institutions, our corporations, our religions. And then, oh, there's a woman in a short skirt, I cannot control myself. Which one? Which one is it? So I don't, I don't really buy the whole, couldn't help themselves excuse. And it's also really fun on the internet to point out that she was asking for it, what was she wearing thing directly contradicts their not all men argument. They get all confused and they get really angry and they type at you and they get cross. And yeah, I think that the sexualization of girls and women isn't about the sexualization, it's just about trying to avoid responsibility for men. I think that's what it is. It's like they're allergic to accountability. And I think that needs to be addressed. Either you have self-control, so maybe a policeman's a bad example, but either you have self-control so you can be in charge of our justice systems and in charge of our educations and in charge of our things, or if you have so little self-control that we're going to have to take away your pornography and your strip clubs and things because you can't control yourself, so we need to take them away. I think men just need to pick one, which one it is. That's it.
Thank you very much, women, girls. It's been extremely interesting listening to your point of views, and again, I think I'm going to wrap up again on this perspective that the spaces are reducing for girls to explore their non-patriarchal selves, their independent spirits, and we are all here because we are expecting for a better future for our daughters, for our friends, or all the young girls around the world. But we need to be way more persistent. I mean, it's tiring. It's gonna be extremely exhausting. I'm 27 years old and I'm already feeling quite tired, actually. Not right now, but generally because it's a constant fight, and we have to be vigilant in all areas. I walk on street, I have to be vigilant in the street. I go home, I have to be vigilant at my home. I watch TV and I have to be vigilant on what is being put in my mind. And this is not the case for all the girls. So collectively, we need to stick to this love for women and womanhood, and to bring forward more of the activism that's been done, all the efforts that have been done by our foremothers, all those witches that were not burned. We are here for them, with them. They are here, and they're gonna make the way for us to go forward, and for all the upcoming girls. I thank you all being here. Thank you, Justine, Azura, and Gemma for sharing. And thank you, Natasha, which is me. Thank you, Natasha. Now we are open for questions. If you have some questions, comments, thoughts, please let us know. Oh.
Hello. As a 67-year-old, I find it quite distressing walking around in the evening and seeing young women with dresses that measure about 9 inches from the shoulder to the hem. And I wonder if the young women on the panel have any arguments that I could counter these women saying, oh, I'm doing it for me, I feel strong because I've got so much flesh on display. How can we break down that belief that women, I mean, I can accept that they have agency, they're making the choice, but they are doing it for the male gaze. And I would like some arguments that I could gently persuade, discourage. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Mm-hmm.
Hello. I think the important thing to remember in that situation is that they think that they have power and all that jazz because they've been groomed to believe that. So I think what is super important to remember is to keep that in mind when you're talking to them. They're getting their self-worth from that because even before they're born, we get them baby girls that say pretty little girl on them. So yeah, we just need to remember that it's not their fault that they're doing that, pretty much.
Here we have another.
What did she ask?
That the young girls who wear like short skirts because they say my body, my choice. If you have something to say about that. We cannot hear you and cannot see you.
What's the question?
We did not hear that. We have. Okay. Yes, please.
It's not for saying it to them, it's for saying it to the fashion industry people, isn't it?
My turn?
Yes, please.
Hello, hi.
Hi.
I've got a couple of comments about you say it starts when you're young teens. I would say it starts much younger than that. I would say it starts at 4, this harassment. When my little girl started school, 4 years old, going to primary school, happy. And at playtime, they all play on the climbing frames. And from day one, the little boys are underneath, pointing up their skirts and laughing at their knickers. And I don't want to paint these boys as anything other than completely innocent, because they are. But this is the training they're getting at 4 years old, that this is how you treat girls. And it's not taken seriously at all. And I don't know, about a couple of weeks after my daughter started school, she wanted me to buy her some shorts, some cycling shorts, because the big girls, like the 7-year-olds, show the little girls, the 4-year-olds, what to do. Well, you've got to wear shorts to stop this, so that they can laugh safely up your skirt. And anyway, complaints to the school get nothing, just a shrug of the shoulders. That's what they're like. And you were talking about getting changed in class. Do you remember? I'm feeling uncomfortable. There is an easy, cheap solution for this. Just put a curtain down the middle of the classroom and they can pull it across. Before PE, the girls can get changed one side, the boys can get changed the other. It was another suggestion I made at school, which was too expensive. It would probably cost £200. So that went in the bin as well. And just a last little point about not all men. Actually, I would say, no, it is all men. It's all men's job to solve this, all of them. You know, if you laugh at a friend's joke, well, don't. Just stand up to them. Stick up for us. So, yes, all men.
Thank you. We have got... okay.
Hi.
Here,
Oh,
yeah.
wow, that was loud. Hi, women. Thank you so much for your words. They've been really inspiring. I am a youth worker and I work in refuges. And I was just wondering, as a young woman who's grown up in a very porn-sick and liberal feminist world, what words of advice would you give to young women about sort of trying to de-glamorize sexualization? Because from my experience personally, as well as with the girls and the young women that I work with, this idea of sexualization, it's very adult and it's very enticing, and with things like OnlyFans and Instagram and TikTok and all the sexy dances, what words of advice would you give or would you want to hear when you were younger about sexualization not being glamorous? Thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
My first advice would be read Andrea Dworkin. I don't know. No, but more seriously, it's a quite difficult question because so much stuff has to be done. But I think with my friends, for example, because it happens a lot, if they talk me about sex work, you know, or if they said like, if they speak about empowerment and they are showing me a video of a girl naked and, you know, with a suggestive pose and really sexualize. I try to explain to them, you know, I try to say, okay, do you think in a woman world this could be okay? I mean, do you think like, for prostitution, for example, because I know, I speak for my female friends, so I know they have good intention. So when they say, yeah, but some women make the choice, you know, to work in the prostitution or stuff like this, I'm all the time trying to speak, you know, but biologically actually, to try to make them understand how it feels for women to be forced to have sex with 10, 20, 30 guys in one day, you know, or even more. I try to make them empathize, but truly and deeply, like, okay, for example, even when you have consent sex, sometimes it hurts and you want it to stop, so you say, stop, please, you know, I don't like it. And if the guy continue, it's a rapist, you know, but I think this happened for everyone, and I try to make them understand this way, like, okay, do you remember the time where you had sex with your boyfriend, for example, and it hurts you, and you ask him to stop, and he did. Okay, so imagine if it is a work, because I think it's pretty, not funny, it's not the appropriate word, but you understand. I think it's kind of funny because a lot of people who defend sex work say that it's an amazing job almost, you know, and that's the only time where these people say that working, it's amazing. And I mean, they just totally forgot that a job is to have some rights, but to have a lot of obligation also. And when it's come to sexuality, when it's come to our bodies, I try to make them understand this way. Just imagine if you have sex with someone and you want it to stop, but you can't because it's in your contract, you know? So that's my example for prostitution, but for other subjects, it could be a little bit longer for the moment.
on this subject, I just wanted to add a little bit more. I mean, working with youth or being young teenager who is exploring the world, it's really confusing, really difficult. And the most important for, especially, I think that works very well for young girls, is to have confrontation within a safe feminist space, where I'm not judged, where I'm not criticized, where I'm not going to be told that this is wrong and right. The initial freedom of saying your mind, it's extremely important. And when you begin in a safe feminist space, a conversation, even if it starts with me saying, okay, you know, I think that women have the right to their bodies, so if she wanna go naked on the street, she can. I should have that space to talk, but in a very sisterlyhood way. All my sisters present in that space, they should have the space to also come back to it and say, this is how you're wrong, I hear you, but this is how patriarchy has, you know, made us think into this way. So try to think alternatively. The alternative, and what is more important, I think, is that we are told to always hate older women, or to have some kind of competition that, you know, they are old and now they have to be left aside. When all the time I had conversation with older women, whether they're feminist or not, there has always been this connection of womanhood. So trying to have that space where you can explore all these multitudes of womanhood, it's really gonna make difference for all the young girls, but also maybe boys. I don't know, I have never worked with boys. It's gonna help them to start having a different narrative, for sure. On this point, I wanted to bring on the stage Olesia Ahrabar. I hope I'm saying the name right. Excuse me, seriously, I'm not really good with names. So she is one of the coordinator of Radical Girls, and she's also the member of European Network of Migrant Women, but with Oser le Feminisme, that's my French. They have launched a book for helping young girls, so I'm going to ask her to talk about it. Thank you. Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you, the 4, 5. Thank you, all of you. I don't know how to count. This was amazing. Just because we wanted to speak a little bit also about the solutions, like how to address all of these issues that were presented today, with Oser le Féminisme, so Dare to be Feminist. That's a French feminist organization of general interest. We have just written a book about sexual education, but it's targeted towards girls, because we thought that there is a gap in the way sexual education is being done today. In France, in schools, they are obligated to give these workshops about sexual education, but it's done, either it's not done at all, or when it's done, it's in a very bad way, and you have organizations coming and telling the girls that it's super empowering to try new things, and to put condoms on bananas, and to be a porn star, and that, you know, prostitution is empowering, and that kind of thing. So we wanted to speak to the girls, and we called ourselves Frangines, which is sisters in French, because basically we wanted to be the big sisters talking to our younger sisters. So we put a lot of testimonies in the book, and we wanted to give our sisters the keys to understand themselves, to understand their sexuality, their desire, their pleasure, to understand society and the power dynamics that exist there. Because for girls and for young women and for women in general, we do not have the keys often to understand situations of violence, especially when it's linked to sexuality, because of everything that was developed today. Sexuality today in our society is confused with violence, but violence is not sexuality, and for many girls, their first experience of sex is actually being raped, and they take years to acknowledge that they were raped, because it was not in some parking at night when they were drunk, it was in a bed with someone they knew. So yeah, we talk about that, we talk about female pleasure, we talk about anatomy, like the right words to speak about our bodies, to speak about our diseases, to speak about everything that relates to us, but we also speak about relationships and physical appearance, like all the stereotypes. For instance, Azura was mentioning, it's not just about black women, there is the sexualization specific of Arab women, for instance. The word that is more searched in pornography websites in France, it's beurette, which is the colonial sexist word to say Arab women. So yeah, we speak about all of this. Obviously, we give keys to understand that pornography is violence, and it's actual women being actually raped and tortured on the set. And it also, as it was very well explained already, gives the ground in society. Yeah, it gives the space for. I lost my train of thought. It gives the space to justify violence and sexualization. So anyway, the book was supposed to be here today, but it did not arrive on time, so I'm a bit disappointed. But you can order it online if you want. It's being used in schools to talk about all of these issues with young women and girls. And yeah, we're also looking for a British publisher to translate it in English. So if you know someone, you can let me know. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Elisa. I think we have time for one more question, and there we have, all right, 2 questions, and then we can finish. Please, yes.
Hi, I'm Jan from Object. I agree, the book sounds great. I wanted to reply to what we say to young girls when they're sexualizing themselves. I think you can make too much of a deal of it. It seemed to work what I said to my daughter when she was dressing up for her first Vickers and Whores party. And I said to her, darling, you know, if you only portray the sexual side of yourself to these boys who we know are out of their heads on porn a lot of the time, that is the only side of yourself that they will see. I know there's a lot more to you than that, and you know, think about that. She did change her attitude. I'm not going to tell my daughter as a feminist what to do with her body. She was an adult, she can choose what she does. Now when she goes to a Vicar and Whores party, she wears a suit and goes as a pimp, and has a much better time explaining that to everybody. I also wanted to mention what this lady said about it really does go back to when they're very, very small, and we have to teach our girls to be assertive in the family, to their brothers and to their friends. When my daughter was 3, she shared a room with her brother. And one day she came to me and she said how horrible he was to her, how he bullied her, and I'd seen a lot of this, I knew it was true. So I said, okay, darling, you have to tell him. Oh no, I couldn't do that. I said, okay, I'll hold your hand and I'll be there, and then you tell him. And would you like him to move out of your room? Because they had a big room together. Would you like him to move into the smaller room? Yes, she said. So I said, fine, that's what we'll do. I went there. She got the courage up to tell him. I then said, and by the way, Tom, his name is, you're going to move into the smaller room because she needs space away from this kind of behavior. So she got a reward for her complaint. She got the bigger room, had all her friends around to play with all her toys, and he had to move into the small room. He got it. Over time, it got better. A couple of years later, she said to him, thank you, Tom, for bullying me so that I learned how to stand up to other boys. And I had to stifle my laughter. I managed to, I have to say that. And I'll tell you what, boys do not bother her now. Believe me, they do not put a foot wrong. She has got them. She gives them the look, and they quail. So there you go. That's a bit of tea.
One sister saved at a time. Yes, please.
Oh, hi. My name is Marilyn from Sweden. Thank you for a great panel. I just want to say that when I listened to you and we're talking about these subjects, I remember a meme I saw. It was like, kink shaming is my kink. So everyone can just say that. But also talking about empowering and the adultification of young girls in the society. We have taken a stand in Sweden to, well, I'm with Child 10, an organization, to actually file lawsuits against OnlyFans. And I hope that we start to do that with Facebook. We had one big case in Sweden where 2 men are raping a woman on live on Facebook. And that live was watched from a lot of people who said this is a rape. Facebook did not turn it off. But when I write, I hate men, you know what happens to me when Facebook finds that out.
Yes,
also talking about the location of our power, or how do you say, when you have power. Because when we're talking about empowering, and we have had questions about talking about how we talk about to women about what power really is. Always question the word power when it comes to sex, when it comes to society. I tend to do that. If you think it's empowering with a lipstick, with a short skirt, it's fine. It's fine, but talk about what real power is, because if we forget that as a community of feminists, we're not going to get anywhere. Power is actually being able to be socially influential, owning things, owning the space, being able to change the world as we see it. That's power, not what you look like. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think it's off.
I think she's raising her hands.
All right, I didn't see. That's a wrap, I think. Thank you very much for listening to us, for your amazing, precious comments. See you around. Thank you very much.
Thank you.